And agendas were emailed out to everyone. So, and I think we have one. Are we going to have one on the screen, maybe? Is that good? So we'll go ahead. First, we're going to have MONENA do some of their formal business, then MOAPCO do some of their formal business, and then some things that are combined that we can report out on.
There's that
okay?
If you want to talk.
No, I'm good.
Okay.
All right. So first on the agenda is a president's report. And there's some copies back there where the water's at, because I have quite a few things that I wanted to let everybody know about. But just a general overview, the MONENA website has been revamped. Your board worked really hard on that and got it all updated. So you can go to that site now and should have current information. We're now able to do job postings. If you'll send those to one of the board members, we can get those posted on the website as well. So that's up and going. Some important dates that are coming up. October 6th, National NENA has started a new wellness initiative, and they're having their first virtual meeting called a health huddle online. The link is on the sheet that's back there, so that's something new that they're starting, and they'd like everybody to join in. January 17th, 2022, they're having the NENA Standards and Best Practices Conference in San Diego, California, if anyone's interested. February 13th through the 16th will be NENA Goes to Washington. February 13th through the 16th, and I have it all written down so I can get it to you, and that'll be easier. March 13th through the 16th will be our spring conference, and that will be at Chateau on the Lake in Branson. So mark your calendar. National NENA will be June 11th through the 16th in Louisville, Kentucky. And there are some Gold Line scholarships that are available for that. Last year, they didn't even have enough people apply to give them all out. So I would encourage you, if you're interested in National NENA, to apply for that scholarship. September 25th through the 28th will be the fall conference for MPSCC, and it's tentatively, we're looking at Kansas City. So there's just some dates to put on your calendar. I know for me, it helps me plan my training budget out when I know those things are coming up. Another new initiative of NENA, National NENA, is called Celebrate and Recognize. Again, on the sheet back there, there's a link. It's a place that you can go to that you can recognize your coworkers, even coworkers from other counties. It just gives you the opportunity to put something on there to say that they did a good job, or maybe they did something well for you and your agency. So it's a way to post and recognize people within our profession. So you can go in there. They've also started a new mentoring program. The link again is on the sheet of paper. But it's if you're someone new in your new position, maybe you've taken on the training position or you're taking on a directorship, they can link you up with somebody who can mentor you. So take a look at that, and if it's an opportunity that you would like to either be a mentor or somebody who needs to be mentored, then definitely sign up for that. They also now have a new 40-hour telecommunicator course. It's available online for the 40-hour certification. It's $299. So that's a way that you can maybe train your people and get their certification without having to send them away. I know a lot of people are short-staffed, so if you can do it in-house, that helps a little bit. So definitely look at that. I also put some legislative things on here, but we're going to have some updates from the service board and from Scott Penman on the legislative side of things, so I'll just let them do that later. The last thing I kind of wanted to add, as far as on the president's side, we will be seeking the positions of president, second vice president, and treasurer. So towards the end of the year, you'll be getting an email from Sarah Lynn that we're taking nominations, and then we'll install those people at the March meeting. So if you're interested in those positions, reach out to any board member and ask about it, and we can get you nominated if you'd like to be on there. The last thing I did was I put contact information for all of the board members and every committee member that we have assigned through NENA. We have some committees that we're working with the 911 Service Board on. We have the Training Committee. We have the GIS Committee, which is Sarah Lynn Hayes. We have the Grant Committee, which is Lisa McCool. The NG911, which is Chuck Farr. We have the AED Committee, which is Sarah Lynn Hayes. And then we have the Scholarship Committee, which is April. And then for the local chapter, Sarah Lynn's the main person on the nominating committee. But like I said, all of that information is back there for you. I thought that'd be an easier way for y'all to get it. So we will move on to Secretary's report. And unfortunately, Sarah Lynn could not be here today. Mark is still under some travel restrictions due to COVID. But she did send out the minutes, the combined meeting minutes from, I think it was the May. So if there's any NENA member here who would like to, I'd entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
Matt would like to make a motion.
Like a second?
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes.
Bonnie, I'm sorry, could you tell me who seconded that motion? I'm typing it.
Yeah, and Angie's getting it for us. She's got it, but it was Matt and JR. Matt and JR.
Okay, thank you.
A treasurer's report. I don't have a formal treasurer's report because Lisa ended up having some staffing problems, so she wasn't able to get it out to us. But I do have a balance. We haven't had any extreme expenditures because of COVID. We haven't been able to do a whole lot. But currently, the balance in the account is $22,934.36. There is a part of that is the benevolence fund. As you all know, NENA maintains the benevolence fund for both organizations. The balance of that is $3,461.33. So NENA has $14,473.03 in the account at this point. We have made a partial payment to Penman for the lobbying services of $5,000, and we'll have another payment coming for that eventually. So those right now, that's the major expenses that we've had. Like I said, we'll try to get you something out. Lisa will on the treasurer's report here soon. April, you have anything to report on the scholarship?
Nothing on a scholarship, but be watching in the next month or so. We'll be opening up the Leon Harden scholarship for the MPSCC conference in the spring. And so that should be opening up soon, and we'll start taking nominations early just so people can talk with their directors, make sure that they have coverage so people can come.
Okay. That's all I have on the NENA side. If you have any questions over any of the information that's on the president's report, just let me know. Definitely feel free to reach out. Hand it over to Zach for his portion.
As I knock over the chair, standing up.
Just be careful of this orange cone here in the middle of the.
Yes,
There's
can't
an orange
kick
cone.
the orange cone. Hello, everybody. My name is Zach Dykes. I am the president for Missouri APCO, and thank you for coming to this joint meeting. Just a couple of things. APCO 2022 is August 7th through the 10th in Anaheim, California. So if you guys want to go to Disneyland or California Adventure, that might be a great time to do that. If you don't like California, I'm right there with you. I joke. For the president's report, our membership is strong and continues to grow. I'll let Angie talk about that here briefly. The goal of our chapter for this past couple of months and continuing on is to work for our membership. And I hope that we've been able to prove that so far in what we've been doing. But we have a lot of things planned that are in development right now. There's a lot of committees that are open for engagement with you guys. So we need involvement from you. If you've not been part of a MOAPCO committee, it's a great place to start. There is quite a bit of work to do, and we need more people than just on the board to work on that stuff. Remember that memberships expire on December 31st, and they do not auto-renew. So you'll actually have to physically go in there and renew your membership, or it will drop off. You will start getting membership renewals in October if you haven't already, and APCO will pester the crap out of you. So be prepared to get multiple emails until December 31st. Missouri APCO has is being recognized at the national level for the work that we've been doing here locally, including Totes of Hope and a bunch of other stuff. We have been asked to be part of a national webinar with several other chapters on how we're developing these programs for compassion and care and outreach. So that's pretty cool as well. I will turn it over to Angie for our secretary's report.
On our secretary's report, our membership number is at 571. And we have minutes to approve from the September 22nd board meeting. I'm still finishing the July 16th when we were virtual in St. Charles.
Okay. So those were sent out today, was that right?
Yes.
Okay, so those were sent out to the board today. Has anybody had or to the membership today, has anybody had a chance to review it?
No, sorry.
None of the board members have had a chance to review it. We will table it for the next board meeting. Treasurer's report. Roger.
Hey, there is a treasury report out there, but since we're having some protection issues, the current balance, this is a combined balance between the Missouri APCO account and the Missouri Partnership account, which is the training partnership, is $74,099. The biggest expenses we've had since July 1st are Pittman and Witten, our $5,000 payment for October. Also, the travel and registrations and hotel expenses for our executive council member, a representative, and our president to go to APCO International, a little over $2,500 for that. And then also the expense of the coins that we just purchased was about $1,038. So in lieu of showing you a report, I'll just give you that. The partnership, training partnership is continuing to go strong. We haven't had any classes, so we haven't had that many expenses. Our biggest deposit's been from the MPSCC for the spring, which we received. Our portion was $10,398. That's all, sir.
Okay. Since it's not in written form, do I still need to accept the motion?
Well, it is in written form.
Okay.
I just have to send it to the board
Then-
separately if you like.
I will accept a motion to approve.
So moved. Matt will second.
Okay, moved by Steve, seconded by Matt. Any discussion? Any opposed? Motion carries. Executive Council report. Cheryl is not able to make it with us unless she's sitting here. She's actually working the console right now. She doesn't have a whole lot of information for us other than APCO 2022. And for those of you who have been following the reclassification effort at the national level, we are excited to announce that the 911 Saves Act was amended into the National Defense Authorization Act, or the NDAA, on the House side. It still has to go through the Senate side. The first time that the 911 Saves Act was introduced back in 2019, it made it to this level and got cut before it went through the Senate. So there's still a chance for it to pass, but there's also still a chance for it to get cut. So just be aware that it has gone into a larger bill, and it will be going before the Senate and has a likelihood of getting passed. But that's where we're at on the 911 Saves Act. Also be aware that there is another piece of legislation out there called the 911 or Protect 911 Act. And that one has to do with developing a way for the CDC to get statistics on PSTD related injuries in emergency communications, as well as develop grant sources for studying that and providing additional help. So that is out there. Again, that's a Torres bill along with a couple of other co-sponsors. So that is currently out and about as well. I think that's all for the Executive Council. Scholarships, we offered 2 scholarships to this MPSCC. We weren't able to offer one in the spring, so we elected to offer 2 for this one. Do I have any of the scholarship winners in here?
Hey!
Woo! Hope you're enjoying. Is this your first time? Okay,
Cool.
awesome. That's what we love to see. So thank you for, number 1, applying, and number 2, coming. So, be on the lookout on our website for more scholarship opportunities. We will be announcing a potential nomination process for the spring. Again, that'll get you to the conference with room and board and travel. So we also, our scholarship team is looking at additional leadership scholarships. We're not going to reveal a whole lot because we don't have a whole lot just yet, but I do want to put that bug in your ear that we do have plans underway to provide national level leadership training to you guys, or at least assist you in getting that. I'm talking a lot. Jeez. Totes of Hope. So in 2019, one of those two, we approved a Compassion and Care tote program called the Totes of Hope. And with this program, what we do is we deploy totes filled with stress balls, adult coloring books, stuff to help keep your mind off stuff, to agencies that have experienced either a traumatic incident, a critical incident, line of duty deaths, something to that effect. Our deployment regulations are very vague for a reason, and it's left up to the regional coordinators on if they're going to deploy or not. We do have totes in all 5 of the MOAPCO regions, and in 2021 alone, we've deployed 16 times in at least each of the 5 regions. 16 times total with at least 1 deployment in each of the 5 regions. That puts us on track to surpass what we did last year. In total, we've deployed 39 times. Agencies have elected to pay it forward, meaning that those agencies who have received totes, a large portion of them have actually restocked the tote for its next deployment. It's not a requirement, but what we've heard from these agencies who have done that is that it's kind of a healing process for them, and it's a closure process for them. So we've seen a lot of good come out of it. If you want to learn more information on our tote program, just go to our website, moapco.org/totes, and it has all the information on what our criteria are, how to request a deployment, who the regional coordinators are, and what our past deployments have been. Roger, you get to talk this time.
Oh, Pro Chart?
Teammates in action.
Okay, so the MOAPCO Pro Chart Committee, which is growing, and as Zach said, we are still looking for people. Teammates in Action is a national program, but Missouri adopted it as a chapter program as well. In this last 6 months, we have recognized a teammate in Northwest Missouri, Troop H, and I forget the rest of it. Originally, it was a Troop H action, but when we started talking, it was a whole team, including 1 field responder was recognized, and then also the Cass County was recognized just a few weeks ago. I'm not sure why we're not just overwhelmed with submissions for recognition. Teammates in Action is really, they did a good job. I just did my job. When you put somebody in for an award, they're always saying, well, I just did my job. Yes, but we want to recognize that you did a good job, and that's what Teammates in Action will do for you. It's a website-based recognition and a social media-based recognition, and then one of our board members will come out and give a certificate and make a big deal about your folks. And so go online to moapco.org, and you'll see that capability of submitting your people for recognition.
That I'll turn it over to April for the conference update.
I can't pick her up with it.
So, obviously, the conference for people who attended the conference before, the fall conference is normally between 175 to 200 people attending. That's not including the exhibitors. We normally have 20 exhibitor booths that we allow. We normally cap it. This year, you'll notice we decided to book to 25. So we capped at 25. Thanks to all of Matt's communication with everybody, all the commercial partners, and all the sponsors from the spring conference. We had a pretty good list, and in an hour and a half, it booked up, which was fast for 25 commercial partners. And out of those 25, we have 23 sponsors and 21 recognized with a booth.
Actually, 23 sponsors, I'm sorry.
Sorry, 22 sponsors. Recognized 21. You'll see 21 balloons. 2 of them are mobile, and mobile about 2 booths. And then another sponsor that's not, they're not going to have a booth, but they're just walking around and they sponsor the event. So a large number for our commercial partner turnout. On the attendee side, our numbers are really low. We had 114 registered. 102 showed up today. 83 were here this morning for opening ceremony and keynote, which is pretty good. We're usually between 80 and 100 for keynote and opening ceremony. But our numbers are low, and one of the things that we noticed, there's still some people who are on lockdown or they can't travel restrictions. The biggest thing is across the state, I know you all know this, we're hearing over and over again staffing issues. A lot of cancellations due to staffing. We lose one dispatcher, somebody gets sick, we can't send our person, the next thing you know, they're calling and canceling because they can't send that person, or they just didn't register because of that. So it's really unfortunate, but I think it's a sign of the times right now due to probably all the things economically that have changed because of COVID. Hopefully that doesn't carry through to the spring next year, but our numbers at the spring were pretty good. You guys heard the revenue, so that was pretty exciting. We anticipate revenue from this conference, we just don't know how much, and you know how I am, I don't want to jinx us. So I'm gonna hold on that and just say we have about 33,000 left to pay out to finish out this conference. We should have a better idea on numbers tomorrow, but there will be revenue. It won't be what we're used to, but that is because of the commercial partners and sponsors. Really, with 114 registered attendees, it just doesn't bring in a whole lot. Brings in enough to have a conference, but not to have all the meals and all the great things that we have. So we need to get out there and thank our sponsors and thank our commercial partners who show up every year and who continue to support us.
We've got 3 of them in the room here participating, so we're excited to have you here.
Well, if you are a sponsor and you are here, if you will stand up.
Your commercial partners stand up so we know.
I know Bonnie had already announced it. Make sure you put down your dates for the spring, Chateau and Branson.
Join the masquerade.
Yeah, it's gonna be a masquerade ball, and so we're excited about that, which is March the 13th through the 16th. We'll know early on if we're gonna have a pre-conference day on Saturday the 12th. We'll let you all know about that. The fall conference dates, we're in the process of finalizing contract with Kansas City. That is Embassy Suites up in Tiffany Springs where we've been before. And we're working through that, and that's September 26th through the 28th. As far as this conference goes, we did something new we've never done before. So NTIA had offered a 911 grant opportunity that they sent out. Missouri was eligible for that this year, which was awesome. Because we have a state 911 director, and because we have a state 911 service board, they've worked so hard. But it did have to go through DPS this time. And so DPS was able to put back about $60,000 this year for actually at the end of 2019 for all of 2020 and all of 2021 for training. And what we had anticipated is we were going to be able to do that for the spring and fall conference and spring conference of 2020 that got canceled, and then 2021 spring conference. Unfortunately, what we didn't know is NTIA has never done scholarship opportunities before with their training money for next generation training classes. And so the process to get us through for the spring conference and get all of our classes approved for next gen so we could send out scholarships just did not happen in time. It was a tight schedule this year, but we got it done, and that's because our education committee worked really hard. Brian and Mabel and I worked really hard with DPS and get that done. But we have 8 scholarship winners that are here right now. We actually had a little bit more of that. Won the scholarship opportunity, but had to cancel, unfortunately, because of staffing issues with their PSAP. And what we anticipate is that we probably won't try to do that again within the SEC, just because the numbers are low, unless NTIA says they think it turned out well. They cover the cost of a videographer, so if you're attending any of those next generation classes, you'll notice some of those classes, all of the classes but one class is being recorded because all the instructors except for one approved that. And so we will be making those classes available through the 911 Service Board eventually. They'll be sent out to PSAPs. I'm not exactly sure how that'll all happen, but that'll be coming. Otherwise, everything else seems to be going pretty well. We kicked off pretty good today. I think lunch was nice, new for plated, but will be plated tomorrow as well. Plated tonight for dinner. Tomorrow night is Andy Beast. Make sure you're there. And otherwise, we're doing a 50-50 raffle for the Benevolence Fund. So you can pick your 50-50 raffle tickets, $1 per ticket or $5 for 6 tickets. At registration, you can see Kevin at any time. She can get you those tickets. And we will be drawing for that 50-50 raffle tomorrow at lunch. Tomorrow at lunch, we'll also be recognizing retiree awards. And we'll be doing the door prizes. Any questions? There's a lot. Dinner tonight, dancing through the decades. Dinner, dancing. That's the end of my report.
No karaoke. Just
Are you
doing
sure,
dance.
April?
Oh, Zach, I'm pretty sure you could beat me.
Well, I say that because you're next up.
No, there's a training.
It is.
We've talked about training a lot. Okay, so to wrap up, we have 60,000 for the NTA for GPS. We are spending on this conference with the scholarships and the videographer, 4,500 of that, which makes a lot more money available for training. The State 911 Service Board is working on some training classes they're going to be bringing through the training committee. We'll be putting those on regionally is what we're anticipating and what we're hoping we can do. Some of that may be virtual, just trying to figure out, and some of it may be pre-recorded, trying to figure out how to use the rest of those funds to get you guys the best next generation training possible to finish out this year, because we have to use it or lose it by December, so we don't want to lose it. We want to make sure that we can make that available every year. Otherwise, we have an RFP process in progress with the state, and that is out for a virtual training platform to be utilized through the state of Missouri for all ECCs, PSAPs across the state, for us to be able to access training, share training classes, and then be able to put those training classes like what we're using right now, and then we have the videographer recording for next generation and how to where it's on the platform, you can access it for every PSAP and every ECC. And the only other thing we're looking for with that, I won't get into all the details, but a platform to put training out on and a platform that shares SOPs and policies on. So those have been our two big things. We really wanted to try to focus on some stuff like that. So hopefully we'll have some information back in the next probably 30 days or so. And then in the next probably 60 to 90 days, we'll have some decisions from the service board. Any questions? Lots of providers and certified classes on the state's board website. If you guys are interested in having an instructor come in and teach, and you want to know if they're certified to teach, to issue your certified CEUs, or if they're a provider that's certified to teach any classes, please don't hesitate to go on the board website under training, and you can click on that list, and it'll show you who's gone through the process to get their classes certified or to become a certified provider, which means that they're certified on an annual basis. They're certified for 3 years, but we just have to submit paperwork.
The end.
You can introduce them.
So, Scott, I don't know, we have Scott Hinman here with our lobbying agency, and so he's here to give an update on legislative issues. Where do you, these guys have all the cameras set up, so I'll have them tell you. I don't know.
You're only talking to like 3 people here, so we'll just pick 2 minutes.
Oh, well, one of them's Steve, so.
Wow.
Steve.
We don't
Where works, so.
Right there.
Here?
Yeah, that's
Wherever.
cool. Just
Okay.
look right in there.
So,
We got him.
Hey there.
quick 2 updates. The,
No, it's weird, sorry.
wait, no, that's okay. So basically this past session, we had 2 kind of main issues we were working on. One, we needed to resolve the issue for application process for the state 911 grant fund from sales tax counties. Previously, the language had been we had to go through the commission for approval to make that application, which wasn't the original intent anyway. So we made that correction so that now sales tax counties can apply directly to that state 911 grant fund without having to deal with their county commissioners, because they're obviously freestanding separate political subdivisions anyway. The second piece, we actually ended up putting both into the same bill. There was a question about the overall liability structure for 911 entities. So not just as a PSAP director or employee or telecommunicator, but also then as the entity. So we also addressed that. Primarily relates to sales tax districts as well, but we wanted to make sure there was clarity about how the sovereign immunity caps apply across the boards. And I think it was literally just an omission 15 years ago, probably, when we didn't, when they were working on that statute, didn't get that included. So both of those issues were resolved. We worked really hard to try and figure out some language to help sales tax districts when we're looking at a use tax in that same county. So the current process for that, counties can go forward to their voters and ask to apply a use tax in their county. And then based on the actual language that that county uses, some of those counties then include the, let's say your county sales tax, your general sales tax is 0.5%. You've got a 911 sales tax for 0.5%. If they go to the voters for 0.5%, there's no money flowing through to the sales tax district. They're trying to make the language modified so that those use taxes would always include that percentage, that's the 911 tax, and also that if they do use kind of higher number, so in theory, including that up to 1%, to make sure that the 911 tax passes directly through to the 911 district. So we got really close on the language. As you all know, this year Missouri finally passed a streamlined sales tax. There is an actual tax in place on internet sales. But we just couldn't quite get the language negotiated to make sure that what we were trying to accomplish didn't mess up the streamlined sales tax, quite frankly. And with the sponsor, the senator we were working with on the language, Senator Neenah, St. Louis region, he's also been the one trying to get the streamlined sales tax passed for the past however many years. So when he said, listen, I'm worried that your language messes up the other stuff, can you promise it doesn't? I'm like, honestly, no. Like, we're still trying to figure out how that works because there was still that point of the conversation where they were saying counties that previously passed the use tax might have to go back and pass it again to try and participate in that state pool. So anyway, so we're gonna have to work on that language again, kind of moving forward. I think we're close on the language. The other issue that's been raised, a couple of folks have asked about now is how if a county says, I'm not, I don't know, what kind of, are we obtaining now? Where are we?
Green, yeah.
So we were closer to the lake. So, Green County says, we're going to pass a use tax that, then, you get taken care of as your 911 board. But if that use tax, if the county says, no, we're not going to put that on the ballot, some districts want the capacity to go forward on their own to put that on the ballot independently. So that's we're kind of starting to work on some of that language. We've got a couple of specific counties that kind of started that dialogue with. We're going to have to pull our legislative folks back together to kind of work through how all that layers, because I think we just need to make sure it's functioning properly and we're not creating a harder path, because my concern would be we end up being able to say, sure, the 911 district could go to the taxpayers, but they have to do that on our own. The county, when they go, can't include it. So you'd have to run two, which is from some kind of, so you can make that argument, that makes sense. I don't think it does, but there's some legislators that would say those are two different taxes, so that people should have the right to vote for them separately, I guess is how to kind of sum that up. So those are the main issues we're working on. The other issue that you all hopefully are becoming aware of, the board has been working with some of the legislation. So the board's got a current GIS project in play. We've been working on a broader proposal to try and pull all of the interested parties in the state together to start looking at how we get the whole state up to speed with GIS. And I think there's some opportunities where the what's the last federal package? What's it called?
The lift.
Yeah, no, right after lift. It has the ARPA. Sorry, thank you. Yeah, so the ARPA funds, there's about 3 areas you can use that on. Broadband being one of the main ones. Governor Parson has announced that he is going to, in his budget come January, put $400 million in the budget for broadband access. So there's a couple of parts to that. One, you obviously can't do NG without broadband. And you don't know where currently in our state and across the country, if you ask if broadband is available in a certain area, they say yes based on the census tract, or no based on census tract, which becomes fairly useless in this context. So there's a need to get that level of that information on a structure basis. Well, that matches perfectly with what 911 is addressing and GIS needs are. So we're looking at trying to figure out where there's synergy in those two areas, where the chair of the House Appropriations Committee is who's in charge of kind of coming up with the House's plan for that money. We had a conversation with him, and last week he wants us to come back with more information on that. So we've been pulling data, and I just did a little map real quick to show where, based on the census tract level, at least, what PSAPs do or do not have access to broadband. And that's kind of point A. And the other part of that is then figuring out that broader GIS project of saying, well, how do you get all these places mapped? How do you get that data collected, put out and get the information put back out so that they can do a better layering and mapping on the broadband money. So we're kind of trying to figure out and work through those types of things. Given the timing, probably in the next month, we'll bring, the folks, whoever they are now for you all, get everybody together and kind of talk through a lot of what those details will look like. So I think those are the main topics. Anything I missed, or you want to?
Question?
Okay. Any questions from anybody? Appreciate you.
Yeah, of course. I'm around off and on the next couple of days too, so happy to always visit. Probably closer to the bar than
Okay. And at this point, we're going to welcome up Brian Madewell. He is the Executive Director and the State 911 Coordinator, Executive Director of the Missouri 911 Service Board, I should say, and the State 911 Coordinator. So.
All right. I think this is real for the shot, right?
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay. Thank you for having me. The two big updates. Scott covered a little bit of it with the legislative stuff. So the other pieces that we're working on are the GIS project currently, and then the NG911 project. And David's back there as well. Anything I missed? With the GIS project, still currently going through the assessing the data that's been received from the 93 counties that we received data from so far. I know that last report I saw there was about 42 counties that were in their hopper, kind of still reports being created, and then eventually actually going out to the counties through individual meetings and having meetings with those counties and the representatives or their vendors, whoever that may be, and providing information on here's what you need to look at, things you need to think of moving forward, and things that for right now you might be able to ignore because there aren't next gen core services here in the state, basically. So, yeah. So that project, the timeline is actually going to be moved back a little bit because of some of the data collection issues that we had a little bit, trying to make sure we get data from as many people as possible. We're still working with folks trying to make sure that who we haven't received data from, that either A, they don't have data, they're unwilling to share it, unable to share it, trying to figure out what status they are, because that's going to really drive some of what our funding asks are going to be related to some of the legislative efforts that we're talking about. So trying to figure out it's going to cost different if there's no data versus there is some data that we could potentially build upon, basically. That's kind of where that's at now. The schedule for the report for the state was the end of September, early October, which is we're kind of right here now. Probably going to push back at least a couple of weeks. So I haven't heard firm deadline from GeoCom on it yet, but I know that they're still doing the individual assessments on the individual counties. Once they have that complete, then they'll have a draft state report that can be looked at by the board, and then the board can approve that moving forward, basically. The next one is that David's currently working on a similar project on next generation 911 side of things. So David's done 2 road tours throughout the state, and I think one of them he didn't touch I-70, which was impressive, and the other one he did use I-70. So he's been making his rounds, asking everybody questions about what kind of equipment they have, what kind of connections they have, trying to get an idea of where's Missouri at, just kind of like we're doing with the GIS project. Where's Missouri at with GIS? Where's Missouri at with what's necessary for next gen 911? Some of the information he's been giving has actually been assisting. We've been working towards and talking to some of the legislative folks We're using that in those discussions, but he's also working to compile that data from his road trips, as well as conversations with us, the board, and his report is due, expected a draft report probably around the middle of October.
That's correct.
So he's expecting something around there, and then, so the October board meeting, you might see a draft report being discussed by the board after it's kind of been reviewed and looked at a little bit. You get an idea of kind of what's coming out of there and what kind of the next steps might be. So, and then you'll see a lot more discussion after that, because that's when we're really trying to ramp it up, figuring out how do we get to the things that we've talked about of, okay, here's where we're at, here's the state of GIS, here's the state of 911 in the state of Missouri. How do we move these things forward? And we all know that part of that is going to be money. So where do we find the money to do that? What makes the most sense to do that? How do we move that forward, basically? So with some of the initiatives that Scott was talking about, it'll adjust those some ways if those get approved. And did you want me to talk a little bit, Scott, about the federal?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I guess it's $10 million.
Yeah.
Whatever.
So there's it's a measly $10 billion. As Scott said, the measly $10 billion slipped his mind now. So there's, at the federal level, there's also some other legislation moving through, and I know Zach did a good job covering the 911 saves and the protect information that's moving through currently that affects telecommunicators specifically. There's actually a little piece that's specifically for NG911 funding nationwide. Where this becomes important is it's actually kind of a once in a generation kind of funding that would actually impact a state like Missouri greatly. Potentially $10 billion for nationwide to improve next generation 911. Based on what we've seen of other allotments, it could mean about 100, 150 million for Missouri for moving some of these projects forward that we're talking about closing up of, hey, here's a state 911, NG 911 plan, here's GIS plan, that sort of thing. So as that moves forward, we're keeping an eye on it. It actually passed out of the House, is in the 3.5 trillion reconciliation and budget.
Yeah, it's in the budget.
In the budget, so it's kind of moving through right now. Still making its way through. Keep an eye on that. That's where that funding actually resides. So you get an idea where that comes out. We're keeping an eye on it because it'll mean a lot of changes for us too, and kind of planning as well. So as that moves through, and fingers crossed, I'm going to be positive when it gets approved.
There you go.
What we're going to do is there's other states that have actually really gone ahead and kind of prepped for this money coming out almost a year in advance before even the grant. You can even apply for the federal grant. And that's kind of what we've been talking at our level about too, is making sure that we're at least ready for it. So we might be hitting folks up to fill out paperwork before the money's even going to be ready or even released from the feds yet, just to make sure that all our ducks in a row and the paperwork's in order. So when that happens, we're going to be ready and actually we'll submit ours first. Hopefully that means we get our money first, and then we just hit the road, screaming basically. So that's kind of the two things that I had, the two big ones, the NG 911, kind of a little follow up on the federal stuff, and then the GIS portion. Anybody have any questions?
Got a question?
Yep.
Earlier, I think it started off, and you might correct me if I'm wrong here, but started off that it was a $15 billion bill. And today you're talking about the $10 billion. Is there a chance, or do either one of you think that there's a chance that there could be a further reduction of that, going from 10 down to 5 or something of that nature? I mean, obviously you're close to that piece.
Possibly. Yeah, I mean, so the national, here's a report that, I just recently saw, kind of the backbone for why we need 15 billion countrywide. They went ahead and just started at 10, pardon me, they started at 15, and then at the same time, we were having an infrastructure package over on the Senate side with the bipartisan group and with Biden negotiating that big infrastructure package that didn't include any of the energy stuff. It was separate on the other side of the chamber. So kind of timing wise, it worked against us because, they brought that number down pretty significantly, 100 trillion, no, 100 billion, whatever they dropped that, they were 2.3 trillion, then with the 2 trillion, whatever it was. So I think that's probably part of why they kicked it at 10. My hope is, we stay at 10, think if I were in Congress looking at the packages, I would try and get the best once, because I think future, the other argument is take 5 a year, right, and play it out longer, but I think every year it gets harder to come back into those numbers. Although, as ironic and bizarre as it sounds, $5 billion isn't a lot of money, right? 10 isn't a lot of money.
Not nationally.
Right, yeah, exactly. And the way the proposals are structured right now, I mean, it is what it is. Like, if it's 150, if it's 100, hopefully, part of why I think in the conversations, we need GIS there, we need our broadband there, so that if it is 100 million, maybe that's enough to do the NG core services, right? To kind of help get everybody on up. But yeah, absolutely. I think there's a chance for a 7. I wouldn't be shocked to see 7 come out. I'm at 0, you're at 10. Pick a number.
So has states been trying to provide information then, and with regards to what they are projecting as a budget to be able to meet those demands, or have they asked for any of that kind of information?
They've used actually the surveys from the FCC surveys that we fill out at the state level. They use those, and the national number 1 office compiled those and provided to Congress, and that's where they actually originally came up with partly the $15 billion and then the $10 billion. So,
if I may add to that, the original dollar figure that Scott said from the report made by the feds, Mission Course was part of the development of that budget. It did not include a lot of items that some people and the report just came out last week about the conversion of fees, and they provided a draft list of what should or should not be proper use of 911 funds. And in that report, they actually said, since we've added more items, that dollar figure should be higher now, because every state is different. But they're trying to say, look, if we're going to allow all these expenses, that number should be higher. So hopefully that will affect the sausage making to see what the last dollar figure will be. But I firmly believe any money that comes out of this will be falling under the new rules of what you can use 911 fees for.
Well, the legislation includes a definition, and the definition of allowable uses hopefully match up with closely the allowable uses that we have in statute in Missouri for our state funds, because the big hook, we should say this, it's about diversion, right? You're going to have to proof up you spent this money, current money, state money, local money, even potentially on 911. So if you've been buying a bunch of, back massagers for deputies with your money, you better change. I mean, it's a pretty serious. The federal strike force has gotten pretty. They gave them a lot more teeth than I would have expected, quite frankly.
So as the feds come back with a request from the state of what those allowable expenses are at this point for you all?
Oh God, no, man. There's drafting legislation. Once it passed, within the accompanying the budget, right?
Okay.
Then they pass it, and then you got to spend $800 million on some conference room, and then they've got a 16-person task force to develop the criteria.
I will share with you all in Oklahoma, being on the technical committee, that we're actually putting together a comprehensive list. And it might be something that you may want to consider as well for the state of Missouri here, to put that comprehensive list together of what our allowable expenses are going to be, because radio is in some states allowed, in other states it's not allowed. And then if it's tied into, well, it's a radio console that's in 911 versus the radio that is extended out to law enforcement, or in some states CAD is not allowable expense. So it might be something that we at least start preparing for in our technical team.
When we were speaking a little bit earlier, that's kind of the advanced paperwork we were talking about a little bit, to make sure that we were going to be in line with whatever was going to be coming out and be able to meet whatever comes through from the federal grant requirements, basically, so that when we apply, we can basically say, here you go, and we've had every county in our state sign off saying they have not diverted, and they prove they've not diverted, and here's what they know that they can use these funds for moving forward. That's part of it anyway. There's other
I'm
pieces
not sure
too,
if I know
so.
we got more.
That was a good question. Anybody else? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I do have one addition. I totally switched that. I apologize. So we do have multiple legislators interested in changing state law to define 911 telecommunicators as first responders. So that's part of what Zach it was talking about on the federal level in the SAVES Act, I think. Is that right?
Yeah.
Right. So, that's also something, the language, we're gonna have to work on that. So we've got about 3 legislators who called and asked about sponsoring that for us, so that's a great, from 5 years ago when we were begging people to help us sponsor bills, and we've got people calling us, it's actually, it's a really good spot to be. So if you have expertise and or interest in that topic too, get to your presidents and tell them you want to help us on drafting that up. Sorry, I forgot about that.
No, thank you for bringing that forward. Look at my notes real quick. Okay, now we're going to move on to old business. Kim has asked me to cover our most recent Tert deployment. It's not really a full deployment. Missouri Tert is the Telecommunicator Emergency Response Task Force, the Missouri side of it. So what we do is we've got a team of certified operators from around the state who have agreed to be part of this task force. And when a disaster happens or something else that takes down a center, these people will go deploy to that center to assist them. So obviously last week, everybody's aware that Independence lost an officer. And we want to make sure that we as a Thin Gold Line community and family support our peers in those agencies that are impacted like that. So we reached out to Independence, asked them if they would like assistance in covering some of their shifts so that they could attend the funeral. Because, we gotta make sure that those 911 calls are still answered. We were asked to try to cover a period of about 36 hours, staffing 5 to 6 individuals each. Unfortunately, we weren't able to fully staff that, but we did get 11 volunteers from 7 centers who volunteered their own time with no expectation of compensation by Missouri Tert. So if you are interested in Missouri Tert or becoming a part of that, talk to Kimma. Raise your hand, Kimma. There we go. She is our state coordinator, and she will be more than happy to drag you kicking and screaming into the Tert program. And you can find her at registration all week. Okay?
I would just add to it that the tasks that were anticipated to be part of Tert did not include such deployments as this. However, in the last couple of years, we have had multiple requests to assist, twice with agencies that had, one that had a virtual collapse of the center, catastrophic mass exodus, if you will. Everybody but one left the center and left it in the hands of a director. And a very similar situation than in another county when there was a consolidation that took place. So though it's not really a task that is necessarily falls under me, it allows for one single point of contact, and then I just kind of put it all together, and it's just, I've already got all of the stuff all together, and I've done it several times already, so it's not that it's necessarily something that falls under Tert, but I don't mind coordinating those efforts we've been able to do so multiple times in the last few years.
Appreciate it.
You do. So we're probably going to go a few minutes over, but April, would you like to speak on the 911-988 task force work group, whatever you call yourselves?
I'm talking again. So we have a 91988 coalition. There's a nationwide coalition. Brian actually wrote me into that. And we have a Missouri coalition. It's mostly made up of professionals on the health and human services and the counseling side. So there's a lot of professionals on the, whether psychologists and psychiatrists, and Brian and I sit on those calls. We've had some other people, some other PSAPs, directors, people start getting involved in that. What we're really trying to do is just make sure we're driving the train together about communicating and working together on the policies and procedures. For those of you who are obviously aware of 988 coming, it's not like it hasn't been here, it's just not been a 3-digit number. But as soon as it becomes a 3-digit number, it's going to change tremendously, especially as we look to the future, because there's a lot of states really moving the ball forward, especially like Arizona and Texas, that are working in conjunction with their 911 centers to make sure that if a 911 center gets a call from an individual who's in a crisis situation, that they get that call over to that crisis call taker who's trained to do that through 988. And some of those are co-locating their 988 people with their 911 centers, which is definitely something that I'm very interested in doing in Jasper County, and I'm already been talking at the state level with our state officials on the coalition to figure out how we move that forward. But that's something that you guys might start looking into if you have a crisis center in your area where your PSAP is, and you're not a director. You might be talking to your director and asking them to get engaged and involved in these coalition calls. Even if they're just in the subcommittee side, that's just 911 and 988 kind of talking through policies and procedures. We need all hands on deck to work through those. We're going to beg, borrow, and steal from other PSAPs and 988 centers that have done this. But 988 will be official soon. And as it is, we know that there's not any funding, total funding dedicated, but we know there is funding coming for them. But it's not going to be enough for them to be able to sustain themselves, nor will they have the technology that they need to find these people who are calling them on 988. They're going to look to us. They're going to need those partnerships and those relationships with their PSAPs and their 911 officials. And so we need to work together in a happy marriage with all of us working together. It could take a load off of our people and actually put it back to the people who are trained and supported. But in some states, it's actually doing that and more. They have response groups that are responding to those calls before law enforcement or with law enforcement and with medical. And that is huge. And I see that being something that could be amazing for all of us. And so I don't know how that needle will move forward in Missouri for every location of the crisis hotline. But it's definitely something that I think we need to be engaged in. We shouldn't wait until they've decided how it's going to happen. We should be working with them together to help decide it. Any questions?
I just add on a couple of things.
Yeah.
There's a recent development too. So the mobile crisis centers, I think, they recently received a grant through the state level of about $6 million, I believe. So
That was the email that she just sent out.
yep, there's actually some brand new development. So there's an effort to state towards that, as well as at the national level. NENA has been approached by some folks that work in the 988 mental health field to develop policies and standards that would work from a national level and then kind of trickle those down to the local PSAPs instead of having, potentially you might have, you've got 50 states, you've got 50 different states doing different things, basically. Trying to make sure that there's at least some consistency amongst what's going on and how 988 calls potentially are handled and how 988 and 911 interact specifically. So instead of coming up with every piece that has their own, it could be there's some good examples like you see coming up NENA or APCO. NAS asked to do that, but they're looking to put out an RFP here probably toward the mid-fall, and then we'll have some information back on that likely start of the winter. So.
And I don't have anything else on 988 Zach, but I did want to mention this is the last year for funding for the First Responder Disability Awareness Program in Missouri. And so if your agencies have not been trained in First Responder Disability Awareness, there are trained trainers that have been certified to train. Our agency has certified trainers, Roger's a trainer, Angie, so many people, I can't even think of everybody, but Angie in Jeff City is going to be probably hosting a class coming up soon, November 15th, 16th. 16th, something like that.
He
They're
sent
trying to
me an
figure out
email.
dates. And then we're looking at hosting another one down in Joplin. I think there's one being hosted in Kansas City, but I think the one in Kansas City is law enforcement and fire EMS related. But just be watching for this, because this is the last year of funding. And we don't know if they'll move that funding to next year again, or if it's just gonna be completely cut off and done. But there are trainers around the state of Missouri. If you get in touch with any of us, we can get you connected with a trainer that can do that.
What's the source on that?
It was through Department of Health and Senior Services and, American Facilities.
Was it a pass-through from the Fed?
I actually think it came out of their state funding. I don't think it was a federal fund. I think it came straight through the state. I think the state put money towards it. Vicki
MODCC.
Davidson, yeah.
MODCC.
Yeah, I'm sorry, MODCC. And Vicki Davidson can tell you, it was like a 3-year grant, and they pushed it for another year, and this is where we're at now.
It might be something to talk about.
Yeah, it would be really nice. And they are becoming certified as a provider of the class. Dave Whalen with Niagara University is the one who puts the class out. They just got the emergency management classes done too. They've been pushing those out as well. But he's definitely somebody who can get in touch with Scott.
Right.
Actually, he just sent his stuff to Dalton.
Okay. Perfect.
Okay, the only little piggyback I have on the 988 thing is a final reminder that in 3/4 of the state, you will be required to go to 10-digit dialing beginning next month. So if you are in the 3/4 of the western side of Missouri, that does impact you. It goes by area codes that have the 988 prefix in it, which is pretty much everywhere but St. Louis and 573. So just remember that you're going to fight with your phones for a while. Okay. I'm done. If you are.
Anybody have anything from the floor that they need to add or want to add? If not, I think we're ready to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion in a second.
Second.
Nothing.
Steve.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
If you would like
Thank
to
you,
know
folks.
about any committees, come talk to me. And I need to see you.
Remember, the report from Neenah is back on the table if you want to pick one up.